Are you talking about me?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're born. I think we're about there. Yeah. Good. Bad. It's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. How many days I need every morning when I think about Thomas?
You know, that might be I'm like, morning. All right, good call. I was getting lost today. I got dolphin socks. These are my second. Dolphins are my second favorite pair of socks.
Really? I have these socks for later.
You get those. Oh, Lori's car. Here's the travel. And then double my number for your number.
What's up, Mike Graham?
Where'd the R go? Mike May, Hammer Brown.
What?
I got a text that says our Facebook is muted right now.
Is muted?
Conversation or the Zoom is something is
Howdy, Facebook Live. How are you
It's
doing?
not.
It's
not muted.
Okay.
Now they're
On Zoom. On Zoom.
Oh, wow. Oh, he heard that.
Oh, that
What
would
number
be,
did he say? Mike May?
that would be good for me.
I don't know. I just got a text message saying that you weren't muted and that they could hear everything.
Well,
Be that big.
well, we are probably the worst people to be right now. I think we have a speak with. Wow, that's such a good answer.
Welcome everyone. I'm Kevin Curry. We're going to get started here. Thank you guys for being here this morning. We're here to celebrate Taylor and her journey. Posted around the room are 3 questions that she's been tasked to answer for us. She's going to tell us who does she aspire to be as a teacher, what's she done to be ready for the student teaching internship, and how is she going to maximize it with her time at Cumberland Valley High School this spring. With that, Taylor, you'll have 30 minutes, which we'll keep track here on the back. The audience is all yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm excited to see all of you here, and I'm very thankful that you're all here to support me. So thank you for that. Dr. Curry mentioned that we're going to go over 3 questions within this presentation. I'm going to start with one of my own, and that is why agricultural and extension education? So as you can see, from a very young age, I was involved in riding horses. It was my passion and got me into the agriculture industry. That led me to pursue ag classes at my high school and allowed me to meet these 2 men right here, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Guy. I remember after being really involved in my ag classes and being so passionate about it that I ran for a state office, coming back home and talking with them, and they asked, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I would like to FFA for the rest of my life. And they said, Taylor, there is only one way that you could possibly do that, and that is to become an ag teacher. So I said, you know what, that sounds fine to me. So that is what I did. I decided to pursue agricultural and extension education at Penn State. Before we get into the 3 questions, I have pieces of paper under the chairs in the audience. I would like some audience participation today, as a teacher candidate. So if you could check under your chairs, check under the chairs that are next to you that are empty, that would be fantastic. 3 of those pieces of paper say volunteer. Just hang on to them for a few moments. 3 have the questions on them that are around the room. If those people with the questions could read them, that would be fantastic.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity?
Awesome, thank you. Who else has a question?
Me, I have, who do I aspire to be as a teacher?
And to round it out, what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in, that actually being you, to become a better agricultural educator?
Fantastic. So today we are going to go over these 3 questions within the presentation. And we're going to start off with question number 1, which is, who do I aspire to be as a teacher? So to start that off, I have on handout page 1 and 2, if you want to look at that, my teaching philosophy. This is a synopsis of who I am and who I want to be as a teacher. So the full philosophy is on that page, and then we have an infographic on page 2. So to start it off, I'm a big believer that all 3 circles of the 3-circle model for agriculture education, that being classroom and laboratory instruction, FFA, and SAE, should have equal weight in a program, and that's really what I want to emphasize as an educator. And I want to do that in these different ways. So I loved in my ag classes that I got to do hands-on things. I had to have experiential learning opportunities, so I want all my students to have those hands-on opportunities and be hands-on in the classroom. I also want to have a student-centered classroom. So I recognize that each student is different, they're all unique, and I want to make unique connections with all of those unique students within my classroom and really center and focus my attention on what they need from me as an educator. I also want to have an inclusive classroom. My classroom should be a safe space where all my students can come and feel that they're welcome and ready to learn, and I want to make sure that they all feel included in that education. I want to have relevant curriculum. Agriculture is a vast, innovative, ever-changing industry, and in order to reflect that in my teaching practices, I need to stay up with all of the different advances within agriculture, and I want to make sure that I reflect that in my curriculum. And then passionate instruction. You might have guessed that I'm really passionate about FFA, really passionate about ag education, and I want to make sure that my students know that as well. My volunteers, would you be able to come up to the front of the room, please? There should be 3 of you. Go ahead and grab a poster and hold it up for me. So this is a little bit of my classroom management plan and philosophy. As a teacher, I want to make sure that I set clear expectations for my students and that they know what happens if they don't meet those expectations, as well as give them an outline of what to expect when they come into my classroom. So I have my classroom expectations here, and then my consequences and my procedures. In my expectations, I want my students to come in not only to respect me as an educator, but to respect each other, so that everyone can feel welcome in the classroom environment. I want them all to do their best, not just try to do their best, but do their best, because trying can sometimes lead to them being like, oh, oh well, not today, having a bad day, which is acceptable, but if they do their best, they're really putting forth their best effort. I want them to be honest, not only for academic integrity purposes, but also with each other and with me. If they're struggling in the classroom, I want them to feel safe enough to come to me and be able to ask me for help with those things. I want them to be prepared, and I also want them to embrace growth in the classroom. My classroom is going to be a learning space. They're going to come here to learn, and I want them to embrace those changes. I obviously don't really want to enforce these consequences, but they reflect my cooperating teacher's consequences in her classroom. So we would have a verbal warning, a student conference, and then office referral or detention. Hopefully that never happens, but those are there just in case. And my classroom procedures, these are just here to reflect that I want my classroom to be a workspace. I want all my students to collaborate with each other, and I want them to maximize their time in my classroom. So thank you all so much. If you want to go ahead and set those down, that'd be fantastic. So if I was given some money and asked to start my own program, this is a little bit about what it would look like. That is on handout page 3 if you want to check that out. This is my model program. So I have 5 different pathways for my program. I am a little overzealous. I obviously would not be able to teach all of this myself. I would have to be a part of a multi-teacher program, but I think it's important that all my students can pursue different facets in agriculture that they're interested in. So I have agricultural business, ag power and technology, animal science, environmental science / food science, and plant science. And underneath those are classes that these students would be able to take within that pathway. So you can check that out if you'd like. And then I wanted to give you a brief overview of if you were to enter a pathway in my program, these are some of the units you might be taking in each of those courses. I just wanted to emphasize with this slide that I really love animal science, and that I also want my students to have a well-rounded education, and I want them to learn a little bit about everything within the class that they're learning about and that industry. So within our class AEE 350, we were asked to make a $15 project that our students might be able to construct in the classroom. And mine is right over here. I have some pictures on the screen of it. But I'm teaching ag power and technology at Cumberland Valley from start to finish. So I decided to make an engine stand, courtesy of Mr. John Seaman's idea. So it's made of wood. We have bolts in it to hold in the 2 different pieces here, the legs. And then these smaller bolts would be measured to specifically meet the measurements of an engine. So that would be placed on here. There's a hole for draining oil out of it, and then this entire thing would be C-clamped to a workspace so that students could really crank down on the engines and work on it that way. All right, so as a part of my program, of course, I mentioned before that SAE, FFA, and classroom instruction are going to be holding equal weight. And to integrate SAE, I wanted to overview a few things that I would expect of my students. So SAE would be expected. All of my students would have a supervised agriculture experience. So that would be part of their final grade. We would also explore that in Introduction to AFNR. So we would learn what an SAE project looks like, explore some different options for our projects, and then make some SMART goals and create that project for our class. Each of them would have their own SAE. And then we would have SAE Friday. So every Friday, we would have 15 minutes to update our records on a record-keeping platform called AET. And then we would have annual project presentations. So it might be a little bit more work than I'm anticipating, but I would love to meet with all of my students and see their projects at least once a year to see how they're developing and growing in that space. FFA integration. So FFA would also be expected and part of the final grade, which might be something new for all of you to hear. I thought that it's really important for my students to not only learn about agriculture, but learn about the soft skills necessary to be successful in the agriculture industry, that being leadership and communication and teamwork. So I would like that to be part of their final grade as well. I'm not going to expect them to be super involved. Not every student's going to want to do everything FFA. However, I would love if they could attend at least one chapter meeting a year and at least one local or state event and learn a little bit more about that organization and how they can develop through it. We also have some FFA exploration. So we're going to overview what FFA is in Introduction to AFNR and really understand the history behind it and what it can offer all of our students. in my class, we were asked to complete a recruitment video, so I'm going to play a little snippet of that and give you a taste of what it would look like for me to recruit students into my program. Oh well. So in this video, I had Thomas and Nell as my partners, and we really emphasized that we wanted our students to be involved in the program, but in order to gain their interest, we used a lot of humor. So that would have been fun to see. It worked when I practiced. We have to adapt and overcome. So we're going to move on from that. I wanted to use some humor in order to get my students interested, as well as give them key information about what our program has to offer in the Ag department. Alrighty. I would also love to have a program that is emphasizes the community and has a lot of community integration. So there should be a mutualistic relationship between the community and my program. I want to have guest speakers, industry tours, have members from the industry serve on things like my nominating committee for my officer team. I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to engage with my students and that my students know what it means to engage with them and how they communicate to be better industry leaders in the future after they graduate. I also want to have an active advisory board and apply for grants to grow my program, like the grants for growing through Tractor Supply. Question number 2, what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agricultural educator? So some of the key courses in my journey are listed up here. We have Science, Literacy, and Policy, which I took with Dr. Kevin Curry. That was really focused on looking behind the science for a lot of different opinions within the industry. And I learned in that class that science is really the facts, and it's important to look at those before making opinions about what's going on in our world today. And I want to really emphasize that in my classroom as well. So that taught me about science and that importance there. A lot of people will scoff at English 15 being up here on this list, rhetoric and composition. However, I absolutely love that class. I like writing, so that might be why, but I also had the opportunity to engage in different essays where they taught me how to really communicate my idea of agriculture education being mandatory in public high school. And with those essays, I actually won an award, so that was cool. I also have my favorite class here from the career of my college education, and that's horse handling and training. In this class, I learned not only a lot about horses, obviously, how they think and how they behave, but I also learned a lot about myself. My professor for that class, Mr. Brian Egan, told us at the beginning that the horses would teach us a lot more than he ever could. And I think that also reflects a lot of what I will be engaging in while student teaching. The students are going to teach me a lot more than I ever could read about in a book or look up on a website. And I'm really excited to take part in that and see parallels within those two classes and my experience for student teaching. I have an equine science minor, so please enjoy my cute pictures of horses. I'm also CPR and AED certified. I have my National Safe Tractor and Machine Operator certification, and I'm an accredited parliamentarian thanks to Dr. Foster. Some of the professional development that I've taken part in throughout my college career. A few months ago, I think in November, we took part in an Ag Inquiry Institute and learned a lot about inquiry-based instruction, which I really enjoyed. I liked the students being given a challenge and were able to work through that challenge and explore different ways that they could answer that challenge within instruction. We also, just a few weeks ago, went to the National Association of Agriculture Educators Conference in New Orleans, where we got to take part in that conference, network with different agriculture educators from across the nation, and take part in some professional development workshops. Some of those I will highlight a little later, but I really liked a lot of the topics that they had to offer and that we could pursue there. Part of that as well, we learned about being a future agri-science teacher through the symposium. So I have a cute picture, Riley and I here. We are taking part in more inquiry-based training, and I really enjoyed that workshop as well. And then I was National Student President for Alpha Tau Alpha, and that taught me a lot about what it means to be a leader in the profession, and I was really thankful for that opportunity. Internships and work experience. So I have quite a few here. I don't have a background in agriculture. I don't come from a family farm, so I try to be really intentional about the work experiences and the internships that I was able to take part in throughout my college career. So I was an intern 2 summers ago at the Southeast Agricultural Research and Extension Center. You can see me driving some equipment there, supervised. Let's just put that out there. But there I learned a lot about not only plant science, but research with Dr. Alyssa Collins, and that was a really exciting experience for me because I was actually doing agriculture and I had never done anything like that before. So I really enjoyed that experience. Last summer, I got to be the summer assistant for Lancaster County 4-H Extension, and that was an awesome opportunity where I got to work with younger students, engage in their different projects, help them create events so that they could showcase what they were working hard on with our projects, and I really appreciated that experience as well. As all of you probably know, I worked for Tractor Supply for a really long time. I got my 5-year certificate up in that picture there, and that taught me a lot about how to work with customers, to communicate and work with a team. The Penn State Horse Barns, I've talked a lot about horses today, and I won't bore you with more things about horses, but I absolutely love that job. And I get to also engage in some veterinary science skills as well, giving injections and medications. And then the Center for Professional Personnel Development, I work right here in this building, Ferguson, and I better the Pennsylvania ag experience for many ag teachers in a lot of different ways. Some of the preparation that I have engaged in to teach diverse learners. So I've taken a lot of classes in workforce education, specifically for students with special needs, and I really enjoyed that opportunity as well. Something that relates to those classes would be the NAA workshops that I chose to participate in. So for those workshops, I focused on how to teach students with special needs better and how to combat microaggressions within my classroom, which I think is really important to make an inclusive classroom environment. So I like those experiences. I've also done observation hours with English language learners, and then I have many opportunities within FFA to work with a diverse group of students as well. Almost there. Question number 3. How am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? So I will be teaching at Cumberland Valley High School in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, with Miss Darla Romberger and Miss Jean Case. I will be working specifically with Miss Romberger, but also with Miss Case occasionally as well. Cumberland Valley is a very large school. They have over 3,000 students and over 200 students in their program for agriculture, and I'm really excited to engage in that opportunity. A little bit more about Cumberland Valley. They have some fantastic facilities that I'm excited to take a part in. So they have 2 classrooms, a shop space, a food science lab, an indoor greenhouse, and they also have a new aquaponics system, which I'm really excited to learn how to implement in the classroom and take advantage of what these spaces have to offer. When I was thinking about my assignment for my class with Dr. Ewing and how to evaluate my cooperating center, there was a lot of things that I wanted to say about the great things that they do, but I narrowed it down to 3 for all of you. So they do a fantastic job of fully implementing the 3-circle model. They have a great FFA chapter. They have SAE projects not only outside of the classroom, but opportunities for students to engage in projects inside of the classroom as well. So I'm excited to learn how Ms. Romberger, in this case, do that in their program. They also have a fantastic digital presence, which I believe ties into the community involvement piece. They update a lot of their social media, and this allows people within the community to get to know what their students are up to, and I believe that's really important for engaging in the community, not only physically having students go out and bring people into their program and show them what they've been doing in the classroom, but allowing them to look at their day-to-day activities within the classroom and how they can maximize their learning opportunities there. I have on pages 4 and 5 a little review of the calendar schedule that I will be engaging in Cumberland Valley. I won't read this to you, but as you can see, I get very busy in the months of February and March and start to pick up things and drop them off slowly in January and April. As a student teacher in Cumberland Valley, I will be engaged in teaching 5 classes. I mentioned a little bit before that I'll be teaching Ag, Power, and Technology from start to finish. As you all know, I am not really a big ag mechanics girl. We make a lot of jokes about it in my cohort, but that's not something that I'm strong in, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that with Cumberland Valley. We'll also be engaging in some animal science, plant science, food science, and biotechnology courses. I'm excited to learn in those spaces. Cumberland Valley focuses on case curriculum, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more how to integrate that into my instruction and learn from that experience. If you would like, I wrote 16 units and 75 lesson plans that you can access at this QR code. It's also, the QR code is on the last page of the handout if you wanted to check that out. My strengths, I believe, going into Cumberland Valley as a student teacher are as follows. So we covered content and animal science. That's my passion. That's what got me into the industry. And I'm really excited to engage in that with Cumberland Valley. I also have a lot of FFA knowledge, so I served as a state officer, and I'm excited to work with their chapter and see how my role as a leader in FFA is going to be different as a teacher in FFA and how I can maximize that experience with my students. Professionalism, I feel that I'm a very professional person, which is a strength, might also be a barrier because I want my students to think I'm hip and cool, you know, but we'll see how that works out. And then I believe I have a growth mindset. So I recognize and fully appreciate that I'm not great at everything, but I'm excited to learn a little bit more about how I can be better in those spaces for my students. Some of my weakness and my professional growth goals would be content knowledge growth. So I mentioned ag mechanics. Here's some things that I did in class this semester to try to fill some of that gap, and I hope to continue to do that as I student teach. I also have some confidence issues that I hope to work with Darla on. She is a very confident, intelligent presence in the classroom, and I'm excited to learn with her so that I can get better with confidence in my teaching. And then supervised agriculture experience is something that I feel I could do better as an educator, learn more about, and I want to learn how that I can do that as an educator with Cumberland Valley. So that's some things that I hope to gain from my student teaching experience next semester. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone in this room. Thank you first to my cohort for supporting me and being incredible friends along this journey. Thank you to my fiance. You have been my rock in all of this craziness, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you to my team and all of the friendships and opportunities for leadership that we've engaged in together. And thank you to my parents and my siblings for supporting me and loving me unconditionally. I really appreciate everything that you've done to me, for me. I also want to thank 2 other people. Mr. Mike Brammer has been a huge influence in my life and taught me what it means to be a leader, not only for students, but as a person, as a part of the community. And thank you to Mr. Mark Anderson for pushing me, challenging me, and helping me to get to where I need to be in order to be a better person, not only for myself, but for everyone around me. So thank you to everyone. I really appreciate all of you coming. And at this time, what questions are there?
You join me in thanking Taylor for starting it. So at this point, I'll queue up the online audience. Kendra is monitoring the chat for questions, so both on Facebook Live as well as the Zoom chat. If you have any questions, please type that into the chat box, and we will relay your question to Taylor. Also, for those of you here face-to-face in the audience, we would love and encourage your questions from you as well. I can get us started, Taylor, with a sort of a general question, which is Cumberland Valley is a very diverse program, as you mentioned, with a lot of strengths. I'm interested in more on that notion of competence and how you anticipate growing in that space. So if you could elaborate some more on where do you anticipate growth as a young teacher and your confidence in leading the classroom?
So firstly, classroom management is somewhere where I really think that I'll be able to grow with experience. Being in the classroom, engaging with students is something that you can't really do in a college class. We can talk about it, but you got to go do it in order to gain that confidence and that skill in that space. Some more growth that I mentioned before is going to be within different content areas, ag mechanics specifically, but Darla promised me that she will be working with me every day if she needs to help me learn those skills so that I can teach my students better. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you, Taylor. We'll take a question from the audience. I don't see any online yet. Kendra, you just tell us when you're over there. Please do.
Taylor, great presentation. Thank you very much. So as part of your teaching philosophy, you mentioned that, let me just make sure I get the right verbiage here, that relevant curriculum is very important part of that philosophy. Could you go a little more in depth for us as to how down the road, when Mrs. Winklowski is leading her very own program, how she is going to ensure that the curriculum she's teaching is industry relevant, and go into as much detail as you can, perhaps like 3-letter acronyms, things like that.
3-letter acronyms. Beth gave me signals and I just did not register those. O-A-C. Yes.
You mentioned a type of committee in your presentation. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that.
So the advisory board is what I mentioned, and then there should also be another board called the Occupational Advisory Committee. Fantastic, I got it right. So that will be where my industry leaders can come and really emphasize what they believe is relevant in the community. So I hope to bring them in as well. I believe that tradition in agriculture is really important to emphasize, but also getting the perspectives of people working within the industry to really advance what I'm teaching and knowing what's coming up within the industry so my students are better prepared to enter the workforce, and knowing those different advances, something that I believe is going to be important and to glean from those individuals. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
Thank you for the response.
Questions from the audience?
Yes, Carson.
So you've held a couple leadership positions during your time here and have been a part of a couple groups outside of the classroom. As a freshman in coming into the program, what kind of advice would you give that person in terms of what groups to participate in and what kind of leadership positions to pursue that would turn them into the educator that you're now becoming?
Yes, so what leadership position should I give advice to people who want to pursue coming into college? So first piece of advice would be not to do everything, because that's what I did, and that was challenging, but I grew a lot in that space. I would also advise someone who wants to come into the agriculture education major to find something to do within college that fuels your passion. So not everything that you have to do is going to be related exactly to agriculture education. We are in agriculture education, so we're learning how to be teachers, but we're also learning how to represent the industry. And it's important for you to remember your passions within the industry in order to fuel your fire to become a better teacher for other people. And that's a little bit about the advice that I would give for people in that space. Yes, Brandon.
So you mentioned that you're going to be student teaching at a school that uses the CASE curriculum, and I'm just curious if you could speak a little more on how that sort of shaped, like as you made your lesson plans and unit outlines, like how did that impact that?
Yeah, so CASE is something that gives you a guideline for what you should be teaching, gives you some lesson ideas for what you can have students do in a laboratory setting, as well as some curriculum that they could engage in as well. I think it's an awesome opportunity for students, for younger teachers especially, to help their students learn hands-on skills in that setting. Some things that I have noticed while using CASE curriculum was being able to pull some topics that I would have never really known about had I been searching blindly on the internet, being able to have a more focused curriculum with focused labs, and I really appreciated that I was able to partake in that. So that just helped me get a framework for what I wanted to do in my classroom and within my lesson plans.
We do have one from online. It says, great job, Taylor. Since you're teaching multiple case courses, how do you plan to manage multiple lab setups throughout the day?
Awesome. So how do I manage multiple lab setups throughout the day? I will be setting up labs during the night before, probably, for my students, as well as during my planning period to make sure that all of my students have the supplies they need and things ready in that space.
Kendra, could you tell me who asked that question? I'm always curious who's online.
It's Darla.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bromberger, thank you for joining us. Taylor, I have a question. So
Yes.
we talked a lot about this total school-based ag education program. I would like for you to give me an example of a topic that would transcend all three components. That you would show me how you would operationalize that and integrate a agricultural topic across classroom instruction, FFA, and SAE.
That would be leadership, I believe. No?
There's lots of right answers. I'm just asking how you're going to do it in your program to teach a piece of technical content. Let's do it easy. Equine science. I heard you say that word equine several times. I think it's foreign to your heart. So equine science, how do you operationalize equine through the Total Ag Ed program?
Awesome. How do I operationalize equine science through the Total Agriculture Education program? I would first start in a classroom, and students who are interested in that curriculum, engage them in different labs so that they can learn more about equine science. I would also have them learn a little bit more about the contest at the state and national level for equine science horse evaluation. So engaging them in that space would bring in the FFA part of the three-circle model, the leadership part, helping them learn that context and what it means to be a leader in that type of industry. And then helping them to really focus in on what they want to do for the industry within the classroom and out of the classroom. So engaging in different SAE projects. Maybe they want to work in the therapeutic writing setting of things. They could engage in that space, and I would help them make those connections within the community and emphasize how they can take that project and really develop it with their knowledge from the classroom and their knowledge from FFA and utilize those leadership experiences that they were able to gain there.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Taylor. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
You mentioned that one of your areas for professional growth is SAE. Can you kind of elaborate more on what you hope to develop within yourself to facilitate SAE better?
Yes. So I remember in high school, I was filling out my applications for all my degrees, and I did it at the very last minute. So I want to make sure that my students know how to keep good records and are doing that throughout their projects so that they're more accurate and detailed. And I want to see how that is taken advantage of and implemented by a teacher within the classroom space. I also want to make sure that I'm learning a little bit more about different opportunities that my students could take out of the classroom as an SAE project. So Cumberland Valley does a really good job at this. They have lab managers that they're able to have students work in the lab, and being a lab manager is part of their SAE project, or working with the chickens at Cumberland Valley, or with the aquaponic system. So.
Yeah, all right, I'm going to ask. So, as the panel, we were conferring here, and we have a question that we don't believe you answered in your presentation.
Oh boy.
Since all three of us missed it. How did you, throughout the last semester mainly, but since you've been part of this cohort, how have you, as we put on here, lifted up, helped advance others through the cohort? And how have you talked about the people that were supporting you and helped through this process, but how have you contributed, or as Dr. Foster likes to say, left the woodpile higher, although I don't believe he's ever cut 10-quart wood.
Whoa!
How have I left the wood pile higher for my cohort? So I believe that I have engaged with my cohort members in order to see what they need and help them with those needs. I ask a lot of questions about where everyone is, mostly because I want to see like how they're doing and their mental state. But I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity to engage with me and know that there's someone there looking out for them. I also have a lot of knowledge in animal science, so I know that I've been working a little bit with Thomas to help him with his equine science lessons and engaging him in that different opportunity for him to learn a little bit more about that area that he'll be teaching in the spring. But I believe that I've been able to work with my cohort and really see where their needs are and help them in that space. And I'm excited that I got to go first for this presentation because I will definitely be doing that more throughout the week because I'm here for all of you, and if you need anything, let me know, because I don't have anything to do now, so.
Find something.
Well, they'll find something. Well, I'll make time.
We have someone from the audience, Mr. Brammer, says, how will you balance your personal and professional life?
I believe that balancing my personal and professional life will take a lot of direction from my cooperating teacher. So I'm not exactly sure what it looks like to be an educator yet. I haven't entered the classroom. So I'm going to look to her for a lot of guidance. But I hope that my personal life will stay my personal life. So I don't want my students to be super knowledgeable about everything that's going on, but I also want to be honest with them and know that they have lives and I have lives, and share a little bit about that in a professional way. Balancing the work life is something that we talk a lot about in different professional development opportunities. So we talked a lot about it as we were attending the NAA conference, and I believe that a lot of it comes with experience, but if you have to, you should take your work home, but some days you shouldn't. So there should be one day, every day, or every week that you go home and you just go home and do what you want to do as an individual. And all those other nights you can work on your schoolwork and what you need to do for your students, but you should also be taking care of yourself and filling your own cup so that you can be a better educator for others.
Any questions from our face-to-face audience?
If you had to go back to this past spring, like you're looking at placements, you're very fresh, like don't even know what the student teaching internship's gonna look like, what would you tell yourself then that you wish you would know?
What would I have told myself if I looked back and...
Like in the spring semester, even before we started looking at student teaching placements, what do you wish you could have told Taylor then?
Well, I would have told her to be confident. She can definitely do this, and she will survive. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I feel like I sometimes am a perfectionist, and I try to do everything to the best of my ability, and that makes me really anxious. And having that confidence is something that I wish I would have worked more on within previous years, but I've also seen a lot of growth in myself. So even if I hadn't said anything, she would eventually get to where she is today. But I would have also said work on lesson plans earlier. Like over the summer. Even if you don't know what you're doing.
Anything else for Taylor? Taylor, we want to thank you for starting us off strong. Please help me in congratulating her one last time. So this will conclude the open public portion of the presentation. We ask that those of you in the audience who retired to 2:14 for refreshments. Our next presentation will start at 10:30 with Mr. Moyer. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah.